I was utterly shocked when I learned from my friend Benjamin that he had sold the house I inherited from my father for $660,000. He delivered this startling news with an unsettling cheerfulness during a phone call from the hospital. Adding to my astonishment, he revealed his plans to travel with his mistress. The whole scenario seemed completely absurd to me, and I struggled to understand why Benjamin would make such a decision about a house that held such sentimental value to me. Moreover, he casually mentioned that he intended to leave his family, including his daughter Nancy, behind. Benjamin's indifferent attitude towards his daughter, who he complained was becoming too arrogant and annoying, deeply upset me. His heartless comments about his child filled me with rage. As I grappled with the bewildering news of the house sale and his plans to abandon his family, I felt a mix of anger and disbelief. It seemed like I might lose my grip on reality. I felt compelled to step in and stop Benjamin from rashly getting rid of the house. My name is Charlotte, and I am a 39-year-old homemaker. My life with my husband Benjamin and our 9-year-old daughter Nancy has been increasingly troubled. Marital strife has been growing, fueled by suspicions of Benjamin's cheating that have lingered for about a year, though I had no solid proof. His behaviors, like staying out late at bars, returning home with strange scents, and buying expensive gifts that weren't for me, raised alarms. Yet I've been too scared to confront him about his possible affair, leaving me paralyzed from taking any decisive action. Reflecting on our relationship, I remember the Benjamin I fell in love with 11 years ago. His kindness and sincerity initially captivated me, and our marriage started off blissfully. However, things began to deteriorate around the time Nancy turned 1. Parenting proved more demanding, and as a full-time homemaker, I needed Benjamin's help with tasks like baths and meals. But as these responsibilities became routine, he grew resentful and gradually withdrew from active parenting. He began to argue that since I was a stay-at-home mom, all childcare duties should fall to me. Benjamin's resentful remarks were frequent, and he often left me and Nancy by ourselves while he secluded himself in our bedroom. As he became more detached, his interactions with Nancy lessened. Even on his days off, he dismissively told her that playing was my job and that he was too busy. Benjamin did not consider Nancy's feelings, often scolding her if she cried and blaming my parenting when things went wrong. To protect Nancy from his harsh words, we would often escape to our room and play by ourselves. It's painful to see how our once happy marriage has become so strained and tumultuous, leaving me to navigate these challenges largely on my own. Whenever I found myself craving a little personal time for hobbies like reading or watching movies, the reality of living with my daughter Nancy constantly left me with hardly any time for myself. Meanwhile, Benjamin was often indulging in his car racing hobby. It felt unfair, but I hesitated to voice my discontent since we depended on his income. This sense of helplessness and frustration had been building over the 9 years of our marriage as Benjamin's lack of interest in parenting and his harsh language became distressingly routine, a stark contrast to the thoughtful and caring man I had married. Despite these challenges, I knew it was crucial to maintain stability for Nancy's sake, since our livelihood depended on Benjamin's earnings. One afternoon, while Nancy and I were drawing together, she praised my artistic skills and suggested I could turn drawing into a profession. Despite Benjamin's often dismissive attitude, Nancy had grown into a forthright, cheerful, and honest girl, qualities that mirrored the opposite of my reserved nature. It was heartening to see her thrive at school, popular among her friends and a favorite of her teachers. Her appreciation for my drawings boosted my confidence and pride, reminding me how much she noticed and valued my efforts. I cherished her positivity, which brought light to the challenging dynamics of our family. As long as Nancy could find reasons to smile, I felt bolstered to face the ongoing challenges. That evening, however, our home life took a familiar downturn. Benjamin came home drunk and collapsed in the living room, His drinking had become increasingly worrisome. As I managed to get his jacket off him, a piece of paper fell out. It was a receipt from a motel, a clear and damning confirmation of my long-held suspicions about his infidelity. Trying to hide my inner turmoil, I quietly tucked the receipt away on a shelf, and as the night unfolded, I lay awake wondering how to confront Benjamin about this revelation. The next morning, with Benjamin barely sober and leaving the house before Nancy went to school, I was left alone with my thoughts amidst my daily chores. The discovery of the motel receipt made it increasingly difficult to ignore the truth or maintain the facade of a harmonious relationship. I knew something had to change, but the path forward seemed daunting. I felt an urgent need to confront Benjamin, hoping for an admission and perhaps an apology within the next few days. As I was lost in these thoughts, my smartphone suddenly vibrated, jarring me from my reverie. An unfamiliar number flashed on the screen, filling me with apprehension. I answered hesitantly, and the caller introduced themselves as a staff member from General Hospital. They informed me that Benjamin had been rushed to the emergency room and was now undergoing surgery for a severe kidney disease. The doctor explained that Benjamin's condition was critical and he might need a kidney transplant. Overwhelmed by this sudden twist in our lives, I listened as the doctor detailed the gravity of the surgery and the need for a transplant. Despite the pain Benjamin had caused me with his mocking and unfaithfulness, I found myself not wanting to lose him. That night, I clung to the hope of his recovery, contemplating the daunting reality of his surgery. As time passed, the search for a suitable kidney donor began. Unexpectedly, I turned out to be the best match. The revelation that I could save Benjamin, despite our strained relationship, added a complex new layer to our story. The situation grew even more complicated with the involvement of Benjamin's parents, who, despite being elderly, were deeply concerned. The decision to donate a kidney required me to weigh our troubled past against the possibility of a renewed bond through this life-saving gesture. My health was not perfect, but I was still the most suitable donor because of our compatible blood types, and Benjamin had no siblings. Admittedly, I had serious reservations about undergoing the surgery. However, the overriding importance of preserving Benjamin's life helped me overcome these hesitations. Recognizing the irreplaceable value of his presence, I decided to proceed as his kidney donor. When I discussed Benjamin's condition and our upcoming surgery with Nancy, she responded with understanding and encouragement. She stayed with my in-laws during my hospitalization. Despite their health issues, they were able to care for her. Nancy enjoyed a close bond with her grandparents, and knowing she was in good hands provided me with immense relief. With that peace of mind, I underwent the kidney transplant surgery, which, surprisingly, was completed more quickly than I had anticipated. I spent about a week in the hospital while Benjamin needed 8 days to recover. Thankfully, there were no complications, and both of our recoveries proceeded smoothly. Just before I was due to be discharged, my phone rang, sending a shiver down my spine. I answered the call, bracing myself for another unexpected twist. As I spoke to Benjamin, who had just received my kidney, I expected words of thanks for the life-saving donation and asked about his recovery. But the conversation took a shocking turn. In an unsettlingly cheerful tone, he revealed that he had sold our house for $660,000 and was planning a trip with his mistress. I was stunned by the news. It felt like a lightning strike. That house wasn't just any property. It was a cherished inheritance from my father, now thoughtlessly sold off. Benjamin's brazen announcement that he also had a mistress added another layer of shock. In my state of disbelief, I asked about our daughter Nancy's welfare, only to be met with his cold indifference. He said he didn't care and was planning to leave her behind. This revelation left me both enraged and appalled. The idea that he would sell the house and abandon his daughter was incomprehensible. Determined to take action, I realized I had to prevent Benjamin from rashly giving up our home. As our call ended abruptly, I was left in a whirlwind of emotions, grappling with his shocking decisions and figuring out how to protect our home and Nancy's future. Struggling to grasp the reality of Benjamin selling our house while he was still in the hospital, the stress worsened my condition, leading to an extended hospital stay. Feeling helpless and distressed, I lay in the hospital bed for days, pondering my next moves. My first instinct was to reach out to Nancy. Without the house, we would have nowhere to live. Despite my anger at Benjamin for his audacious actions and his affair, my primary concern was for Nancy's well-being. I decided to call her at my in-laws' house, where she answered the phone. I anxiously asked Nancy how she was coping and if she felt lonely, especially with the news of our house being sold by her dad. Her response was unexpectedly reassuring. She calmly informed me that she had managed to handle the situation, explaining that her dad had instructed his mistress to sell the house. Nancy's mature handling of this surprising turn of events left me both surprised and proud. She reassured me that everything was fine and expressed her gratitude for my concern. Encouraged by Nancy's composed demeanor, I felt a bit of peace settle within me. However, curiosity about what was currently happening with Benjamin and his mistress lingered. Reminding myself of the need for rest, I allowed sleep to take over. After 4 days of recovery, I was discharged from the hospital and made my way to my in-laws' house. Upon arrival, Nancy greeted me with joy, and my mother-in-law welcomed me back with a gentle smile, expressing her happiness. In contrast, my father-in-law's expression was grim as he apologized for Benjamin's actions. I was baffled at how Benjamin could stray so far from the values instilled by his wonderful parents. Despite their apologies, I acknowledged that perhaps I should have spoken up sooner. As we talked, my in-laws expressed their determination not to let Benjamin have his way. Intrigued and somewhat anxious, Nancy and I decided to head home. However, on our way, we encountered an unexpected scene in front of a realtor's office. There, we saw a disheveled Benjamin and an unknown woman, presumably his mistress, engaged in a heated argument. Benjamin, dressed in sweatpants and with unkempt hair, appeared visibly distressed. His mistress, wearing a short skirt and only one high heel, looked frustrated as she complained about the house not being sold and a canceled purchase deal of $660,000. The chaotic scene unfolded before us, adding another layer of complexity to our already tumultuous situation. Benjamin's angry gestures and his mistress's loud complaints drew shocked looks from passers-by. Nancy and I, equally surprised, approached them seeking an explanation. Upon questioning Benjamin about his actions, he and his mistress were visibly taken aback, gasping in surprise. Accusations flew immediately, with Benjamin suggesting that I must have talked the buyer out of the deal. Dismissing their baseless claims and instinctively protecting Nancy behind me, I stood firm, ready to address the mess that had unfolded. I stood firm against their accusations, deeply troubled by the unfolding drama. The realtor, caught in the middle of this chaos, reacted with disbelief upon discovering that I was Benjamin's wife. The cancellation of the house purchase had thrown a wrench in their plans. Benjamin, pointing at his mistress, admitted he still had debts from the money he had lavishly spent on her. It slowly dawned on me that Benjamin intended to sell the house to settle these debts and secure a new place for them both. The realization washed over me like a harsh wave. Benjamin knew full well that the house was a precious inheritance from my father, and yet he was willing to disregard Nancy and me in his scheme to seize my most valuable asset. My anger surged as I confronted him. Despite the tense situation, he continued to hurl insults, displaying a shocking lack of decency. I challenged his audacity to sell my house without my consent, emphasizing that I was the rightful owner. My anger grew as I questioned whether he had gone as far as forging documents to facilitate the sale. Then I revealed a surprising twist. Benjamin had been bad-mouthing the supposed buyers of the house, unaware that they were his parents. This revelation about my in-laws' involvement came from Nancy, who had discussed Benjamin's misdeeds with them. Infuriated by their son's actions, my in-laws had decided to step in and protect both their daughter-in-law and their beloved granddaughter. Nancy stepped forward confidently, explaining that her grandparents knew the house's significance to us and disapproved of its hasty sale. In a strategic move, they had pretended to buy the house before anyone else could. Faced with this deception, Benjamin, desperate and defeated, unleashed a vulgar laugh and lashed out at Nancy and her grandparents. However, Nancy remained calm despite his verbal assault. In response, I pulled a piece of paper from my bag and thrust it under Benjamin's nose, ready to confront him with undeniable evidence. The unfolding drama highlighted the complexities of family dynamics and the lengths one would go to protect the ones they loves. I brandished the divorce papers and declared resolutely, "I want a divorce." Instead of grasping the gravity of the situation, Benjamin snorted and scoffed, questioning my ability to live without him. Unfazed by his arrogance, I decided it was time to dispel his misguided assumptions. Determined to shatter Benjamin's illusions, I calmly informed him that I had a plan in place. "Don't worry, I'm going to receive a lifetime gift from your parents," I stated, revealing that despite everything, his parents were stepping in to support Nancy and me, ensuring we would be taken care of. This move was not just about ending a marriage, but about securing a safe and stable future for Nancy and myself. I recently shared the news of receiving a significant pre-inheritance gift with Benjamin and his mistress, which left them visibly surprised. I explained that my in-laws, facing their health issues, decided to transfer some of their wealth to me sooner rather than later. Initially, I thought Benjamin might be the recipient of this generosity, but my in-laws were clear that they felt I deserved it more, especially since I had given them a cherished granddaughter. They expressed disappointment in Benjamin, who had not shown appreciation even for a life-saving organ donation they had facilitated. Feeling fortunate for their kindness, I gratefully accepted the gift. This decision visibly upset Benjamin, making him look pale and disturbed. He vehemently opposed the arrangement, labeling it as unfair and corrupt, and even threatened legal action. However, I calmly pointed out that his financial recklessness was to blame for his current situation, and our parents had made a perfectly reasonable choice. I also doubted aloud whether he could afford the cost of a legal battle, considering his history of financial mismanagement. Confronting him more directly, I warned that I intended to claim every cent due to emotional distress and child support. I sternly advised him that I was prepared to go to great lengths to ensure he fulfilled his obligations. Overwhelmed and regretful, Benjamin pleaded for mercy, but it was clear that his apologies were too late. I firmly told him that I would relentlessly pursue justice for both the insults and the neglect he had shown towards our daughter Nancy and myself. As Benjamin and his mistress hurriedly left the scene, a realtor who had observed the whole exchange thanked me for handling the awkward situation effectively. The resolution, though tense, was necessary to uphold respect and accountability in our family dynamics. After settling any misunderstandings, I was ready to embrace a new beginning. Holding my daughter Nancy's hand, we walked home together. She thanked me for being her advocate, and her smile in that moment filled me with resolve. Silently, I promised to always protect her. The divorce from Benjamin proceeded smoothly, ending a marriage marked by prolonged distress. Surprisingly, it concluded with little fanfare, prompting me to reflect on why I had tolerated so much for so long. It became clear that Benjamin had squandered a significant amount of money on his affair and had borrowed heavily to support his indiscretions. His mistress eventually left him, unable to cope with his financial instability. At the same time, Benjamin faced professional setbacks. His company, struggling with material shortages, had to downsize. Benjamin, working in the factory, was one of the first to be laid off. While unfortunate for him, it seemed likely that the company chose to dismiss employees based on poor performance or behavior, which might have included Benjamin given his conduct at home. Now jobless, Benjamin scraped by with part-time work, showing little initiative to seek full-time employment. His life appeared bleak, having lost his job, lover, and wife. Despite my past efforts, including donating a kidney to him, Benjamin had taken my sacrifices for granted. It seemed that karma was finally catching up with him, and it was time for him to focus on repaying his debts. Meanwhile, I turned a new leaf by venturing into illustration, using the assets inherited from my in-laws. Inspired initially by Nancy's praise of my drawing skills, I received positive feedback from clients who valued the meticulous and skillful nature of my work. I plan to expand my client base and continue working hard to provide a better life for Nancy and myself. This new chapter was not just a recovery from past wounds, but a proactive step toward a thriving future.
What on earth is happening? Why are you making all these charges on my credit card? I demanded, my voice trembling with frustration. My husband's reply was laced with chilling satisfaction. Consider it punishment for all the backtalk you've given me lately. You'll pay dearly for defying me. Fury surged through me as I realized his intent to manipulate me through my own finances. Go to hell, Logan, I shot back. Little did my husband know that upon his return, a surprise awaited him that would change everything. I'm Aspen, age 37. A few years back, my world turned upside down upon discovering my pregnancy. What should have been a joyful period filled with anticipation and excitement became marked by stress and anxiety, primarily due to my husband, Logan's, emotionally abusive behavior. The man I believed would be my rock and support system seemed more engrossed in his career than our growing family. Ironically, Logan served as the CEO of a prominent family counseling center, advocating for family values and support. Witnessing his hypocrisy as he neglected his own family was disheartening. His intense focus on professional success led him to disregard my emotional needs and well-being. The toll of his abuse became evident during my pregnancy, with constant stress and emotional turmoil taking a physical toll, resulting in complications during early labor. In this terrifying experience, I desperately needed his support and care, but he remained distant and preoccupied with his own pursuits. Holding on to hope that the arrival of our son would bring us closer together and awaken a sense of responsibility and love in Logan, my hopes were shattered. He continued to prioritize his career over our family. It felt like I was drowning in a sea of loneliness and neglect, yearning for a partner to share the joys and burdens of parenthood. Instead, I navigated the challenges of motherhood alone, sleepless nights, constant worry, and overwhelming responsibilities weighing heavily on my shoulders. Despite expressing my need for more support, all Logan did was yell and threaten to worsen my life if I continued bothering him about what he deemed useless matters. Do you find your career more fulfilling than our relationship? I asked one day, desperation evident in my voice. He replied coldly, my career provides me with a sense of fulfillment and success. Unlike you, it doesn't burden me with trivial concerns. Do you consider taking care of your son insignificant? I pressed, hurt and frustrated. Please refrain from addressing me in that manner, he snapped. I've already informed you that I'm occupied. Leave my office. Handling Roy on my own was challenging. He deserved his father's presence, but my husband stubbornly refused to take part in raising him. I have more significant responsibilities than babysitting. I need to focus on my career, Aspen, he said. How can you dedicate yourself so diligently to a company that emphasizes family values, yet neglect your own family? I asked, the resentment clear in my tone. Please don't question me. You'll regret it, Aspen, I assure you, Logan replied angrily. Logan, do your worst. I'm fed up with your attitude and I'm finished with you. Perhaps I should divorce you and bring your idealized family values down with me, I snapped. Logan always disliked when I hinted at divorce, deeming it bad for business. Expressing this infuriated him, leading to more verbal and emotional abuse. Months passed, and Roy grew up with little involvement from his father. Logan's absence became increasingly noticeable, but I was determined to create a loving and stable environment for Roy, taking on the responsibility of raising him alone. Logan orchestrated a performance worthy of an Oscar as Roy's first birthday approached. During the celebration with family and friends, he put on a fake smile, portraying himself as the best dad ever. He even invited people to publicize the occasion for his workplace, claiming it was good for his brand as a loving father and husband. However, this couldn't be further from the truth. Despite being tired of his deceit, I was grateful for the assistance. Yet children don't lie, and my little Roy was no exception. Whenever Logan attempted to hold him for the cameras, Roy would cry and scream, only calming down when soothed by me or other family members. It puzzled people that Roy reacted so strongly whenever his seemingly loving and present father tried to hold him. Logan casually dismissed it, attributing the situation to factors like the fragrance he wore, or jokingly suggesting the emergence of the Oedipus complex. However, the hired press personnel diligently documented everything, following his instructions to refrain from sharing posts and images that portrayed him negatively. He reassured them, asserting that any challenges with Roy were likely due to typical fussiness. For someone like me, who was well acquainted with Logan's deceitful facade of fake smiles and laughter, the experience felt akin to a horror movie. Although Roy's first birthday celebration left much to be desired, I found solace in the fact that things concluded without major issues. With a father like Logan, a moderately decent party was the best one could expect, as no amount of pretense could conceal the underlying ugliness he concealed. Despite his adept performance and acting, the truth about Logan's character, laden with duplicity and deception, would inevitably surface. This revelation occurred shortly after Roy's birthday, when my husband, Logan, dropped a bombshell. Casually one evening, he revealed plans for a family trip to Hawaii, leaving me in shock. The gravity of the situation hit me. How could he consider leaving just as I had resumed work and needed his support in raising Roy? I decided to talk to my husband, questioning the seriousness of his intentions and his apparent disregard for my needs. Are you even serious about this trip? Do you realize how much you're ignoring my needs and responsibilities with our son? I asked, expressing my frustration. Logan barely looked at me, his tone dismissive. This trip is for me and my brothers, not you. I don't see why you're making such a big deal out of it. Frustrated, I pressed on. You haven't even considered my role in this so-called family trip. Regardless of your plans, I still need help with Roy. You can't just leave. Logan's gaze turned cold as he looked me directly in the eyes. I am going on this trip, with or without your approval. Cease your persistent badgering, he concluded. His words were sharp, like knives cutting through me, and I could barely recognize the man in front of me. The person I once cherished was now a stranger, consumed by his selfish desires. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of his indifference. How could he prioritize a vacation over the well-being of our family? Why did we even bring a child into this world together, if this is how he intended to behave? At that moment, tears streamed down my face, and I struggled to grasp the depths of his behavior. We committed, Logan. We mutually decided to welcome a child into our lives, I remarked, desperation evident in my voice. Logan's tone turned frigid as he disdainfully declared, I only had the baby to maintain appearances. If I had known you'd react so negatively, I wouldn't have had a child. It's a burden I regret every day. His words landed on me like a blow to the stomach, and the man before me was no longer the one I had fallen in love with. I married a monstrous individual, someone more concerned with their image than the happiness and stability of our family. Unable to bear the weight of shattered dreams and a broken heart, I wept uncontrollably, realizing I had married someone cruel. How had I been so blind? Logan's final words shattered the silence, intensifying the fire of my despair. When I return, I expect to find a compliant and obedient wife. No more of this nonsense, he concluded. Unbeknownst to me, that night marked the emergence of newfound strength within me. Despite the pain and heartache, I knew I had to protect myself and Roy from this toxic individual. I silently vowed to surpass his expectations and reclaim my independence as Logan set off on his trip to Hawaii. Naively, I hoped his absence would bring relief from his constant abuse. only to discover that the torment would persist in a different form. It began with a notification on my phone several hours after his departure. Unusual transactions and exorbitant amounts surfacing on my credit card statement. Panic gripped me as I realized Logan was using my card to finance their extravagant vacation. I immediately called Logan, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. "What on earth is happening, Logan? Why are you making all these charges on my credit card?" His reply was filled with a sinister satisfaction. "Consider it punishment for all the backtalk you've given me lately. You'll pay dearly for defying me." Fury surged through my veins at his audacity to exploit my finances for control. "Go to hell, Logan," I exclaimed. In his rage, my husband retaliated. "Oh, you want to play tough now? Let me tell you, darling, the only reason you're acting like this is because I'm not there to teach you a lesson. I'll spend so much money that I'll max out your credit card. You'll regret crossing me." Fed up with his abuse and threats, a fire of determination ignited within me. I refused to be his victim any longer. "Go ahead, Logan, do your worst. I promise you, I will ruin your life just as you've ruined mine," I replied firmly. With renewed determination, I took the first step toward freeing myself from this nightmare. I ended the call and proceeded to block him to stay focused on my mission. That very day, I began the process of hiring a skilled lawyer recommended by a close friend and initiated divorce proceedings. Fortunately, it didn't take long to schedule a meeting a couple of days later. After sharing my harrowing story, my lawyer advised me to gather evidence exposing Logan's true nature to maximize my benefits in the impending divorce settlement. Meticulously combing through security camera footage, text messages, and voicemails, I documented instances of Logan's aggression and cruelty. I reached out to the publicity team Logan had hired for Roy's birthday party, urging them to provide pictures and footage of Logan and Roy, revealing that even his son felt unsafe in his presence. With their sympathy and cooperation, they sent me all the evidence I needed, wishing me well on my journey for justice and reparations. The pieces were slowly coming together, and with the support of friends who had long advised me to leave this man, I finished my investigation within the week. Throughout, I continued documenting the frivolous charges on my credit card as further evidence of his attempt to control and abuse me. I chose not to disable the credit card, confident that I would recover the money and more from the divorce. I let him believe he was causing me harm, all the while planning to inflict much greater pain in the end. The evidence I had gathered would function as a potent tool in this pursuit of justice. No longer would I permit Logan's manipulation and mistreatment to control my life. A week had elapsed, and I recognized the urgency to act swiftly, as Logan would return from his trip in another week. I desired to leave him a delightful surprise upon his homecoming. He endeavored to reach out to me through various channels, compelling me to reconsider unblocking him or face the impending repercussions. Resorting even to email communication, he remained oblivious to the fact that I would incorporate these correspondences into the compilation of evidence against him. Despite his persistent efforts to re-establish a connection, he consistently left a trail of threats. Despite the escalating intensity of these threats, my determination for justice remained unwavering. If ever there was a moment to part ways, it was now, particularly with Logan abroad. Acknowledging my fear, continuing to stay with him after ignoring him during his trip, seemed even more daunting. There was no turning back. It was imperative to sever ties with him permanently. Intending to reclaim my freedom, my focus shifted towards relocating both Roy and me, along with all my possessions, to stay with a reliable friend. Logan's trip to Hawaii catalyzed my emancipation, as his attempts to manipulate me only fueled my resolve to escape his detrimental influence. The storm was brewing, and I was ready to unleash its fury. Fueled by self-love and the bond with Roy, we were poised to rise above the darkness, reconstructing our lives on a foundation of strength and resilience. 12 days elapsed since his departure, and I took pride in my progress. Securing legal representation, initiating the case-building process, and successfully extricating myself from the toxic environment marked significant achievements. Recognizing the invaluable support from friends and family, I understood that their assistance played a pivotal role in my swift departure and recovery. As I finalized the move and gathered my last possessions, Logan's brother reached out, likely acting on behalf of Logan himself. Frustrated, he conveyed his dissatisfaction, accusing me of immature behavior and insinuating that becoming a parent had impacted my mental stability. I took a deep breath, trying not to rise to the provocation. "I'm not interested in discussing this," I replied firmly. "If that's all, then this conversation is over." After a pause, he handed the phone to Logan, and it became immediately clear that my husband felt just as combative. His voice dripped with disdain. "Hello, Aspen. I'm sick of your defiance. Do you really think you can keep acting like this?" he asked. "Why are you calling me? I have no desire to converse with you," I replied, not hiding my displeasure. "Are you still engaging in childish antics? Has becoming a parent messed with your head?" My husband kept pressing. "What is it that you want?" I asked sharply. He took a deep breath. "I just wanted to inform you, since you went ahead and blocked me, that upon returning from our vacation, the boys and I will be having a celebration," he continued. "You truly entertain me if you think I'll undertake all those tasks for you and your siblings," I retorted, my voice edged with controlled anger. "I'm responsible for taking care of the baby, and I'm not going to let you indulge in all your juvenile antics." Logan cut me off, now sounding almost amused. "It's not just myself and my siblings making a comeback. I've also invited key stakeholders of the company. Therefore, preparations must be for their arrival. Make sure the meals are prepared, and it would be wise for you to dress elegantly. We'll be back in the early morning, so everything should be set by then," he concluded. I seethed with anger. How dare he address me so disrespectfully? Hearing him speak now illuminated the foolishness I had tolerated for far too long. Removing the rose-tinted glasses revealed the true ugliness of this man. He embodied a monstrous demonic presence, and the realization that I had endured his company for an extended period repulsed me. Instead of showcasing my newfound strength and determination through a confrontation, I chose to pause and take a deep breath. "All right, Logan, no need to worry," I replied, holding back the storm brewing within. "You, your brothers, and your superiors are about to be taken aback by what I have planned for you." Logan's voice softened into a smirk. "That's the spirit. That's the kind of partner I desire. We'll talk later. I'll send you a list detailing all dietary restrictions and such," he finished. I concluded the call and exited, leaving the divorce papers on the kitchen counter alongside my ring. Collecting the last of my belongings, I bid farewell to a chapter of my life that had haunted me for far too long. Logan's reappearance after his lavish journey to Hawaii, a mere 24 hours later, confronted him with a scene that rendered him utterly astonished and self-conscious. I'm certain that as he entered through the front entrance, his gaze must have widened in astonishment at the unnerving stillness and the partial vacancy of the house. The vanishing act of his spouse and offspring, along with the unmistakable existence of divorce documents resting on the kitchen counter, undoubtedly plunged him into a state of profound disbelief. How I yearned to have observed the entirety of shock and dismay imprinted on his countenance. I savored the anticipation of him realizing that his dominion of control and manipulation had crumbled under the force of my determination. However, my joy was short-lived, as calls flooded in from his two brothers and the deceitful Logan himself. His anger resonated palpably through the phone as I reluctantly picked up. Logan's voice erupted with fury, demanding an explanation for everything. "What's the meaning of all this? Do you think you can just walk out?" he fumed. "I have crucial shareholders on my side and they're just as perplexed as I am." Keeping my voice even, I responded, "I'm divorcing you, Logan. The walls of your deception are closing in, and you would be fortunate to ever comfortably show your face in town again." Confusion and desperation marked his voice. "What are you talking about? This isn't happening," he stammered, trying to grasp the situation. "Check the news," I said with finality. As planned, local tabloids showcased his scandalous downfall on their front pages. The man who championed family values, the leader of a company built on love and support, stood exposed as a hypocrite. His true nature laid bare for all to see, thanks to a campaign orchestrated with the help of publicists hired for our son's birthday. The news spread far and wide through social media and word of mouth, expanding Logan Brown's downfall beyond public humiliation. The repercussions rippled through his professional life. Superiors once impressed by his charm and seemingly perfect family life saw through the facade, deeming him an embarrassment and swiftly terminating his employment. One former superior, in a cutting remark, stated that retaining Logan would be bad for business, exposing him as an anomaly, a contradiction to everything the company stood for. Stripped of his title, reputation, and social standing, Logan became a pariah in the community. The man who was once respected and admired was now a pitiful figure, desperately trying to salvage the remnants of his shattered life. As for me, I relished in the knowledge that my escape from his clutches was imminent. Divorce proceedings were underway, supported by a weight of evidence and my legal team. I anchored myself firmly on stable ground, steadfast in my convictions. Logan's frantic entreaties for my return played out like a malfunctioning record, each plea met with unwavering rejection. His voice resonated with regret, imploring me to reconsider, but each time I clung to my resolute resolve. Aspen, I implore you to come back. I've acknowledged my errors and I genuinely repent. Our family is worth fighting for, he pleaded, his tone wavering. Logan, there's no prospect of reviving a connection with you. Roy has enlightened me on the essence of a loving, supportive partnership. We both deserve more than the toxic relationship you offered, I replied, firm in my resolve. Aspen, I am incomplete without you, he continued almost desperately. I've forfeited everything, and the idea of existing without you is overwhelming. I'll discover how to embrace Roy. I assure you, I'll do whatever is necessary. Logan, that's no longer my concern. This is the outcome of the decisions you made, I replied, unmoved. His sorrowful pleas reached me, but I remained resolute. The scars from his emotional mistreatment run deep, and no apology can erase the pain he caused. Embracing that, I deserved happiness, and a life free from toxicity gave me strength. Faced with his desperation, I stood my ground, steadfast in my decision to forge a new path forward. The road ahead would be tough, but I knew I possessed the fortitude and resilience to rebuild my life, abandoning the shards of a fractured marriage. Logan must confront the repercussions of his actions. As the divorce proceedings approached, he would grasp that the journey to redemption is not swift when a heart has been fractured.